بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of 40 hadith. We were talking about hadith 39, about khair and shar, good and evil, and we ended with a section of Mir'atul Uqul, which is commentary on Al-Kafi by late Allama Majlisi, Muhammad Baqir Majlisi, the author of Biharul Anwar, because we have Muhammad Taqi Majlisi, father of Allama Majlisi, who himself was a great alim, great mujtahid, and his son Muhammad Baqir Majlisi is the one who is the author of Biharul Anwar, as well as Mir'atul Uqul and many other books. Rahmatullah alayhima. Imam Khomeini, after quoting the passage from Allah Majlis, of course we quoted in an expanded way because we wanted to see more of what he said, but he has a selection. So after that he makes some comments that I think when we explain later his points about the hadith and about the whole idea, maybe those things become clear, so we don't need maybe right now to go into many details, especially some are very kind of hawzavi discussions. And then he continues with explaining few words in the hadith, for example tuba, and he says tuba according to Jawhari in his Sahahul Lugha is from tib, and then there is a transformation of ya to wav, and he says tuba lahum means a tayyib life, a pleasant life would be for them. Some have said tuba is a tree in heaven, and some have said tuba is heaven itself, it's used as heaven itself. There is a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that tuba is a tree in heaven whose root or roots are in my house and the branches are in Ali's house. About wail, he says Jawhari said waih and wail, these two words are similar in pronunciation, waih and wail, but waih according to Jawhari is for rahmah and wail is for adab. If we say فَوَيْلٌ, for example, لِلْمُصَلِّينَ فَوَيْلٌ or وَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ, for example. But he says, Yazidi says they are synonymous, and some have said whale is a valley in hell, and some have said it's a well, a bear, a well in hell. So these are few points about the words and terms which are used in this hadith. We had some of them before, but then he wanted to expand on the meaning of khair and shar, so he quoted the passage from Allama Majlisi, and he himself, when he put the translation, he for veil he said why, which in Farsi is used as a kind of warning. Wailo said why, like wow. I think in English maybe we can say that way. Now, here we have 3 chapters which are his own explanation and ideas. We mentioned 2 of them inshallah today. The last one is about Jabr, the idea of Jabr, predetermination or predestination, determination or predestination, which he tries to refute very briefly. We will discuss this inshallah next session. So I want to share with you his points in 2 chapters. One is what he calls در بیان آنکه هر یک از خیر و شر متعلق ایجاد و خلقت کردند. So he wants to explain what does it mean that khair and shar both are created or initiated. So creation belongs to them, means they both are created, as we had in the hadith, for example. And also اشاره به کیفیت وقوع شر در قضای الهی. How it comes that in divine decree something shar, something bad or evil can happen in this world. If everything is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the whole world is created by Allah, how it comes that we have some bad things in this world? We want to explain the philosophy behind this and what does it mean that they are bad, all these things. This discussion is one of the difficult and at the same time important discussions. It is discussed in kalam, in philosophy, and in irfan, because all these 3 sciences want to understand and explain Allah and the world and the relation between Allah and the world. So mutakallimin have discussed, hukama and philosophers have discussed, and urafa have discussed this issue. He says, it is established in ulum aliyah, in high sciences. I think he refers to hikmah and irfan, philosophy and irfan, that the system of existence, nizam wujud, the whole system of being that is there in the highest possible level of perfection. There could be nothing better than this system. Top of the system is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the whole system which is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best, the most perfect thing, the whole system. Here I want to go into some barakats, although it's not mentioned here, but maybe it helps, that you have to understand that how creation happens. We should not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created things separately. For example, right now we have billions of human beings and much more of different types of animals and plants, and then non-living beings, and then angels, all these creatures that are there. Allah is not creating each of them separately, or each cell in them and each atom in them, for example, separately, and each generation separately. If you want to understand, you have to understand it in a systematic and in a holistic way. And I think this ayah is perhaps referring to this. I cannot say definitely, but I think this ayah is possible to be interpreted this way. وَمَا أَمْرُنَا إِلَّا وَاحِدٌ. Our affair is not except one. Allah is one, and everything that comes from him is one. Philosophers also have this qaida, al-wahid. Al-wahidu la yasturu anhu illa al-wahid. So, how many things Allah has created and how many times He has created? If you want to be precise, you have to say He has only created one thing and once. But what He has created at once in itself is an ongoing process, or at least part of it has ongoing process. It's possible to be analyzed into billions and billions of parts, different moments, but Allah has only created one thing. From Him only one thing can come, and that must be shadow, or maybe you can say shadow, you can say manifestation of Him, and that would be the best thing possible as a mumkin. All the beauties and perfection of Allah are reflected in His creation. The difference is that this is dependent, this is contingent, this is created, and it's just reflecting Him. Otherwise, whatever was possible to be created is created, and whatever beauty Allah has is reflected, but as much as a contingent and finite system can show. So this was my point. Let's go back to the text. So he says, this nizam wujud, this system of being, is in the highest degree of perfection and goodness and highest degrees of beauty, husn and jamal, the system, the whole system. And it cannot be anything other than this. If you think carefully, it's impossible to think in another way. How it's ever possible that the most perfect, the most knowledgeable, the most powerful being creates something that didn't have that level of perfection and beauty could also create something lower. From Him, what matches Him should come. And if there were another, for example, creator who was less perfect, then less perfect creation would have come from that. There is no miserliness, there is no ignorance, there is no incompetence, there is nothing to restrict what can come from Him. So whatever is possible to be created is created. And this is why we say He is fayyad ala al-itlaq. Fayyad ala al-itlaq. He is most gracious in a kind of absolute way. No condition, no waiting condition, no suspension, no limitation, no miserliness, nothing. So this system is in the highest degree of perfection and goodness. And he says we can argue for this according to Burhan al-Lemmi, which is what I just explained, to say that this illa, this cause, can have this ma'lul. Like when you see fire, you see there must be a smoke. Sometimes we see a smoke and we say that there must be fire. This is Burhan Enni, from ma'lul to illa, from the effect to the cause. But sometimes we go from cause to the effect. We see the fire and say there must be smoke, there must be heat. This is lemmi, from illa to ma'lul. So here we said, with such illa, such cause that we have in the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only ma'lul has to be perfect. But perfect in the sense of contingent perfection. And it is possible also to explain it in other way. He says we can argue in lemmi, or we can have an expanded explanation. Of course, the very expanded understanding is exclusive to Allah Himself. Munshi, Zawt Munshi, Munshi or Munshi means Allah, the one who has done insha. He has initiated, He has originated this world. He knows the best what He has created. But through wahy, through revelation and divine teaching, He can explain. He says what we want to explain here, and it's suitable for limits of our book here, is that whatever is a matter of perfection and beauty and goodness is from wujud, existence. Those who have studied philosophy, you know that we said everything that we have is a matter of existence, and there is no zed or thani or ghair for wujud. There is no other thing, no opposite to wujud, no second. Everything is wujud. Allah is wajibul wujud, perfect and absolute being. Other things that exist, they are finite and limited and contingent beings. We don't have anything else. And then in the discussion about the difference between wujud and mahiyya, we said that mahiyya by itself is nothing. In the sense that mahiyya can be existent, mahiyya can be non-existent. Al-mahiyyatu min haythu hiya laysat illa hiya la mawjuda wa la ma'duma. Mahiyya, which is the limits and the borders of any finite and contingent being, in itself can be existing or non-existing. There was, for example, no child here. These parents were given a child by God. The mahiyya of child before and after is mahiyya of child. That it didn't mean that it has to exist, and it didn't mean that it must not exist. It's equal to existence and non-existence. Adam, also non-existence, is nothing. So Adam or mahiyya, both of them are nothing. It means they have no impact. They have no influence. Everything is existence. But then we have different degrees of existence. According to Hikmat Muta'aliyah, the difference between different types of beings is in degrees. Tashkik fil wujud. We have a hierarchy of beings. All the differences in this hierarchy are based on the different degrees of existence. Of course, there can be horizontal also differences, like two individuals of the same type. Then their difference is in their tashakhus, or for example, place, etc. But if you have different levels of perfection, it's because of different degrees of existence. In any case, آنچه از سنخ کمال و جمال و خیریت است, whatever is a matter of perfection and beauty and goodness, is not out of existence, because we don't have anything else out of existence. Opposite in a real sense is not there for existence. If you mean in notion, yes, Adam is opposite to existence, but Adam doesn't exist. Mahiyya is another notion, but Adam and Mahiyya have no impact, no reality in the sense of being outside, doing something, having some impact, some outcome, some effect. No. And therefore he says هیچ یک به حسب ذات و خودی خود چیزی نیستن. Adam and Mahiyya by themselves are nothing. بهایی ندارند. They have no value, no impact, no power. It is through existence that they can have some impact. For example, Mahiyya, when it comes with existence, then if you have Mahiyya of fire in the real world, which means when it is with existence, then that fire can burn. Or if Adam is attributed to wujud, Adam muzaf, like Adam as-sihha, non-existence of health. Okay, then this non-existence of health can create problems. But not because of Adam, because it's Adam as-sihha. Because sihha has some benefits, and if sihha is not there, those benefits are not there, then problems can be created. So Adam by itself doesn't have any impact. So kulliye kamalat, all perfections as partuv jamal jamil ala al-itlaq است. All the perfections are radiations or under the light of absolutely beautiful being, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. و تجلی نور مقدس کامل مطلق است. And its manifestation of the sacred light which is perfect, or the light of absolutely sacred being, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other beings have nothing of their own. They are faqr mahz, absolute poverty, absolute nothingness. All the perfections are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one point. The other point that he says it has been established in its own place is that آنچه از ذات مقدس صادر است اصل حق وجود و صرف متن هستی است. This is also a very important point. You know that Imam Khomeini was very established philosopher and also very established in theoretical irfan, in addition to his own practice of irfan, commitment to spirituality. He was teaching, for example, aswar. Even in Najaf he used to teach aswar of Mullah Sadra. In Qom he used to teach philosophy. Then later of course he maybe focused more on fiqh and usul, but even in Najaf he used to teach philosophy, at least to some point. So he here mentions something which is very important, and the reference is given also in the footnote to Aswar by Mullah Sadra. Even what I said now is from second volume of Aswar and first volume of Aswar. The next point is from second volume of Aswar. So he says that what comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is issued, what is yastur sadir, what is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is existence. Please remember, borders, limits are not from him. To make it very simple, to simplify this, if we have different rooms open to sunshine, one room is smaller, one room is bigger, then their window and their opening again can be smaller and bigger. Depending on their size, depending on how open they are, how close they are, they get different level of light. Some might be absolutely dark because there is no opening. Some might be very bright, depending on the size, on the light, opening, etc. But are these differences in degrees, are these limits from sun? No. Sun is just giving light as much as possible. Of course, this is as I'm simplifying, because sun, in the end of the day, even sun is limited. But I'm just simplifying. Sun has much more than what these things can take. But this is their limits. And if some has taken less, it's not because of sun. Or if you take gallons to Niagara Falls, and 1 gallon, 10 gallon, different containers, different tanks. Depending on the size of these containers and how much energy you have to to collect, for example, water to keep this container under waterfall, then you can take different amount of water. But these are not because of limitations of the source of the supply. So اصل حق وجود و صرف متن هستی, what is issued from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the origin, is the being itself, without any limitation to حدود عدمیه or ماهویه, any non-existential limits or any mahovi limits. For example, it is a horse and not an elephant. Okay, horse has some boundaries, some hudud in mahiyya, which makes it horse. Another makes, for example, being is made elephant. Another is a human being. Another is a flower, etc. These boundaries are like, for example, different containers have different shape. When water comes, they take different shape. Okay, the shapes and these borders are not because of source of water. You understand? And these are not real things that you say, oh, there is then some another supplier. No, these are not real. These are where what they have received ends. Okay, so you have 4 liters of water. What is given is water, but why it is 4 liters? This there is nothing given. Water plus 4 liters. Water is given. This one could take only 4 liters. Okay, so now we have 4 liters of water, but to be 4 liters is the limit of this capacity of this receiver. Okay, so what comes from that source is asl wujud or asl haqq wujud, the existence, the very principle of existence, or the very existence, you can say. And all these hudud, these limits and boundaries of Adam and Mahiyya are not from the source. زیرا که عدم و ماهیت غیر صادر. Adam is not created. Mahiyya is not created. Ja'al doesn't belong to Mahiyya or Adam. محدودیت در فیض از محدودیت مفیض خواهد بود. If these limits were coming from the source, then God forbid, it means that the source had limits. Source has no limits. Whoever explains phase and ifadha according to what Ahl Ma'rifat, people who have deep philosophical and irfani understanding, if they understand what is phase and ifadha, they would understand that in phase of Allah there is no limit. His essence has no limit. His phase, His graciousness is also without limit. As I said, he is fayyaz al itlaq. So whatever is coming from him directly and immediately has to be perfect. Whatever comes from him must be matching him, must be perfect. پس فیض او که ظل جمیل مطلق است، جمیل مطلق و جمال تام و کمال تام است. So the faith, the graciousness that comes from Allah, which is shadow of absolutely beautiful being, which is Allah, the face also must be absolutely beautiful, but in a dependent way, not independent. Allah is independent, but what comes under him and from him must match him. فهو جمیل فی ذاته و صفاته و افعاله. So he is beautiful in his essence, no imperfection, no impurity in his essence. Jamilun fi sifatihi, in his attributes he is beautiful, no impurity, no imperfection there, no ugliness, no limit. And fi af'alihi, but af'al, you have to remember, what is directly his action has to be jamil. But then in the process, when there are lots of limitations and interactions inside the system, some part of the system may suffer from the other part or may hurt others, harm others, but overall the system is the best. جز اصل وجود متعلق جعل و ایجاد نخواهد بود. Except being, nothing else is created. Creation doesn't belong to anything other than wujud. And it is demonstrated in its own place که جمیع این شرور, all the problems that we have in the world, destruction, death, illnesses, catastrophes that can happen, things that annoy us, animals, insects, for example, that may annoy us, etc. All these things are in alam tabi'at, happen only in the lowest domain, not in the whole system. All these problems that is only in the lowest one, in the material world, in this nature or natural world that we have, and it's because of tasadumat wa tazad. It's because of they hit each other, they interact with each other, they conflict with each other, not because of existence. Existence is that water which comes, is that light which comes. Problems are in the lowest domain when, because of the physical laws, there are lots of interactions. Of course, for our purpose, this is very good, because we need actually to live in such a world in order to be tested and show and achieve our perfection through our voluntary decisions. The problems are because of naqs dar nash'eh. This domain by itself is not perfect. Yes, this is actually we said this is the lowest one. It cannot be perfect. It's the lowest domain of creation. And because of narrowness, which is there, limits and narrowness. And these limits are because of hudud wa naqa'is, which are outside existence, like the capacity of different containers. اصل حقیقت نور وجود است که بری از جمیع شرور و عیوب و نوا. The principle, the foundation, the root of reality is light of existence, which has no problem. اما نقائص و شرور و اشیاء ذره, all the problems that we have, all the harmful things that we have, all the, things annoying, us, for example, all are not created primarily. They are side effects, side products. When, for example, 10 people have only 1 gallon of a container with 1 gallon capacity, and they need more, then they will maybe fight over it, or maybe they decide nicely to share it and use it with carefulness. This is not created. What is created is water. These problems are because of the limits of the capacity of receiving. So he says, bil jumla, as a conclusion, whatever primarily is created and has been made, Ja'al is a philosophical explanation. Actually, in Arabic philosophy, last 2 weeks we talked about Ja'al. Whatever is created and Allah has made primarily is khairat, kamalat, is good things, perfections. And if any problem happens, is on the side, it's secondarily, it's a side product. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Nisa, verse 72, Ma asabaka min hasanatin famin Allah, wa ma asabaka min sayyi'atin famin nafsik. Whatever good comes to you is from God. Whatever bad comes to you is from yourself. This shows water comes from God, limits are from yourself. Light comes from Allah, limits are from the receiver. Also, Quran says in Surah Nisa verse 78, قُلْ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Everything is from God. In which sense? In the sense that the whole system is under Him. But some things are primarily, some things are secondarily coming from Him. So this is what he mentions here. I wanted to mention 2 chapters, but I think this chapter is enough. So we have a small chapter about how khair and shar are run through the hands of people. We had ajraitu, ijra, how these things flow and run through the hands of people, and then about refutation of jabr. Inshallah we discuss this bi'idhnillah in next session. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.